Somewhere off the coast of Mississippi, there's a barrier island you can only reach by boat. No bridges, no cell towers, no roads. On the 4th of July, 2026, hundreds of people went there to celebrate. Only one of them didn't come home. The 38 hours. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment to this channel for more true crime stories. And if you're new here, tell us where you're from in the comments. We love to hear from you. Ocean Springs, Mississippi. A small coastal community on the Gulf, the kind of place where everyone seems to know everyone. This is where Nolan Wells grew up. It's also where this story begins to unravel. Here's the detail that's kept true crime communities and independent investigators fixated on this case for over a month. On one of the busiest boating days of the entire year, along a stretch of coastline lined with private docks, marinas, and doorbell cameras aimed at the water, there is, according to those who've reviewed the footage landscape, no confirmed video of Nolan Wells making it back to shore. Independent online investigators have spent weeks mapping out which cameras cover which stretches of waterline, trying to answer one simple question. If Nolan came back from Horn Island, the way his friends say he might have, where is he on camera? Now, to be fair to the investigation as it currently stands, the absence of footage isn't the same as proof of anything. Camera coverage has gaps. Not every dock has a camera pointed the right way, and holiday weekend footage doesn't always get preserved or reviewed the same way. But it's the question that opened this case to public scrutiny, and it's the reason a routine drowning investigation turned into a nationally watched case within days. Because as we're about to walk through, the missing footage is just the first of several things about this case that, more than a month later, still don't add up. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He'd graduated from Ocean Springs High School in 2025, and by the summer of 2026, he was already playing wide receiver for Southwest Mississippi Community College. Family and friends describe him as close with his parents. The night before he disappeared, he reportedly made salmon for his mother and father, Christine Wells Wansley and Elmore Wansley Sr. Those close to Nolan describe him as someone with a simple, non-negotiable rule when it came to group outings on the water. If you leave with a group, you come back with that same group. No one gets left behind. His father has pointed to that rule directly in public statements. It's part of why the family says it's so hard to believe Nolan would have simply chosen to stay behind on a remote island as the sun went down. On July 4th, Nolan traveled out to Horn Island, a remote barrier island about 10 miles off the Mississippi coast, reachable only by boat, with a group of friends from Ocean Springs. According to CNN's reporting, that group included 3 friends he'd known since high school, all of them white. He was last seen there around 3 p.m., wearing blue swim trunks and sunglasses. Here's where the story starts to splinter. Somewhere in the process of the group leaving the island that evening, something broke down. According to accounts that have circulated from those close to the group, some believed Nolan intended to stay behind briefly, potentially to catch a ride back with someone else he'd met on the island. Others reportedly believed he was already accounted for on the boat he'd arrived on. I want to be upfront here. Some of the specific names attached to this disembarkation confusion, including claims about who Nolan may have been talking to on the island, have circulated in true crime and true crime-adjacent corners of the internet, but I could not confirm them against major outlet reporting. So we're going to stay with what's actually been confirmed. Whatever the miscommunication was, the result is not in dispute. Nolan Wells was left on Horn Island as the boats headed back to the mainland. And there's another detail that's confirmed and, frankly, chilling on its own. Nolan left his phone and his keys behind on the boat. His mother would later use an app to track that phone, not to Nolan but to a friend's house on land. According to Ben Crump, the family's attorney, that fact alone doesn't sit right with the family. What teenager would leave their phone behind if they're going to stay on this island? Crump said at a press conference. It's not adding up at all. Let's talk about what happened on the water that afternoon, because this is where independent investigators, and eventually official ones, started finding inconsistencies. According to reporting and materials gathered during the investigation, there is footage and eyewitness material placing a boat believed to be connected to the group at Horn Island earlier in the day with one set of adults aboard. Later in the afternoon, additional footage reportedly shows the same vessel with a young man matching Nolan's description, same swim trunks, but with a different group of adults on board than earlier in the day. I'll flag clearly, the specific name attached to this boat in some online accounts has not been something I could confirm through verified reporting, so we're not going to use it here. What matters for the timeline is the pattern. A boat connected to the group appears to have changed who was aboard it at some point that day, and that boat is part of what investigators have been trying to reconstruct. There's also a confirmed emergency call that afternoon. According to reporting, a sea tow, a private boat towing and rescue service, was contacted after a boat experienced mechanical trouble, reportedly related to a failing bilge pump and water intake. Attorney Ben Crump's legal team has said forensic audio specialists are now reviewing that full emergency call as part of the independent investigation. Whatever happened with that boat trouble, the group evacuated back to the mainland without Nolan. By around 4:30 in the afternoon on July 4th, the boat carrying Nolan's friends left Horn Island. Nolan did not. That's the last confirmed departure time we have. What happens after that is where this case becomes, in the words of the family's forensic consultant, statistically almost impossible to explain. From 4:30 p.m. on July 4th to the morning of July 6th, roughly 38 hours, there is, as far as has been publicly reported, no confirmed sighting of Nolan Wells. Let that sit for a second. Horn Island, on the 4th of July, is not an empty place. It's one of the most popular boating and camping destinations on the Mississippi Gulf Coast during the holiday. Investigators have said dozens of witnesses, reportedly around 60, were interviewed. Sheriff John Ledbetter's department publicly asked the community to come forward with any photos, videos, or information from anyone who was on or near the island that day, specifically around the island's northwest tip, where Nolan was last seen. And still, nothing. No confirmed photo. No confirmed video. No confirmed conversation with another person after 4:30 p.m. The family's independent forensic consultants have pointed to this as one of the most statistically strange elements of the entire case. An 18-year-old on a crowded barrier island packed with phones and cameras during one of the most photographed weekends of the year, apparently vanishing from all observation for a day and a half. On the morning of July 6th, a search crew located Nolan's body in the water near the northwestern tip of Horn Island. Officials initially said there was no evidence of foul play and that drowning was suspected. But as of the most recent reporting, more than a month later, no official cause or manner of death has been released to the public. The Wells family, through Ben Crump, has said plainly that they do not accept that Nolan's death was an accidental drowning. That brings us to the part of this case that's proven hardest to crack open. What the forensic evidence actually shows, and what's being kept from the people who are asking. There are 2 autopsies in this case, and as of this recording, the public has only heard from one of them. The first is an independent autopsy conducted in Washington, D.C., by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell, hired by the Wells family, with the exam itself funded by Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights campaign. Preliminary findings were presented publicly at the NAACP National Convention in Chicago in late July. According to attorney Ben Crump, that independent review could not rule out foul play and left several specific questions open. How Nolan entered the water, whether there was neck trauma, whether there was any bleeding around the brain, and what, if anything, was found in his stomach. Reports from that presentation also described an area of unexplained discoloration on the back of Nolan's head, something the independent team says has not been adequately accounted for. Here's the detail that's arguably the most frustrating part of this entire case for the family's independent doctor. According to WLBT's reporting, the throat and airway tissue that could help determine whether Nolan suffered any trauma before entering the water was not present for the independent examiner to review during the second autopsy. It had been retained by the state for testing during the initial exam. Dr. Mitchell has reportedly been working to obtain that tissue for his own analysis. Whether or how that gets resolved could end up being central to whatever conclusions the case eventually reaches. Then there's the second autopsy, the official one conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. As of late July, that autopsy is confirmed complete. But District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath has said the results will not be made public, not to reporters, and not to Nolan's own parents, until they've been presented to a grand jury. In a public statement, McElrath explained that this is standard procedure for her office. Every non-natural death in Jackson County, she said, is handled the same way. Presented to a grand jury before details are released. That's a normal legal process. But for a family that's been waiting more than a month for answers about how their son died, normal process and closure are two very different things. More than a month after Nolan's body was found, this case is now effectively being investigated on 4 separate tracks at once. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department, under Sheriff John Ledbetter, continues its own investigation and has continued to ask the public for tips, while also specifically warning against the spread of unverified claims and misinformation, some of which has already circulated on social media, including at least one image falsely presented as recent that was actually from weeks before Nolan disappeared. District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath's office is preparing to present the completed investigation, including the sealed state autopsy, to a grand jury, which will determine whether the evidence supports any criminal charges. Ben Crump and attorney Eric Hertz are leading the family's independent effort, which includes the private autopsy, forensic audio review of the emergency call, and reportedly ocean engineering experts examining Gulf currents and tides to determine whether Nolan's body should have drifted to where it was ultimately found near the island's northwestern tip. "We want to know how that's possible with the oceanic tides," Crump has said. "It's not adding up." And on the other side, attorneys J. Tyler Cox and Edward Pulsick represent the 3 friends who were with Nolan that day, including Warren Hudson and Jack Spitalo, both of whom returned to Horn Island in early August with their legal team to examine the island's layout firsthand. Their attorneys have been equally direct in public statements, saying their clients had nothing whatsoever to do with the tragic death of Nolan Wells, and warning that anyone continuing to spread what they call defamatory claims about the 3 young men will be held accountable to the maximum extent of the law. There's also a broader current running underneath all 4 of these investigations that can't be left out of this story. Nolan Wells was black, and the friends he was with have been reported as white. That fact, combined with the missing footage, the withheld autopsy, and the unexplained 38-hour gap, is a significant part of why this case has drawn national civil rights attention. Comparisons to other high-profile cases involving young black Americans, and public allegations from the family's legal team that the investigation may not have been handled even-handedly from the start. Mississippi's governor has publicly stated he has full confidence in the sheriff's department's handling of the case. The DA's office maintains the investigation is being run the same way any other death investigation in the county would be. Both things, the routine legal process and the very real public concern about how it's being run, are part of this story right now. Neither one, on its own, tells us what happened to Nolan on that island. More than a month after his body was found, Nolan Wells' parents are still waiting for the same answer everyone watching this video wants. What actually happened to him during those 38 hours? Christine Wells Wansley put it as simply as it can be put. The only question the family has is what happened to their son. Before you go, here's what I want you to sit with, and tell me in the comments which one bothers you the most. The waterfront lined with cameras, and still no confirmed footage of Nolan making it back to shore. The conflicting accounts of who was supposed to be watching who when that group left the island. The throat and airway tissue that wasn't available for the family's independent doctor to examine. And the 38 hours, a full day and a half, where a teenager on a crowded holiday island simply disappears from view. This case is not closed. It's headed to a grand jury, and we don't yet know when. When there's an update, I'll be the one bringing it to you. If this is the kind of deep dive investigation you want more of, hit subscribe. Silent Cipher Crime is where I'll be covering every update as this case moves toward the grand jury. Like this video if you want to see more full investigations like this one, share it with someone who needs to see it, and drop a comment below. I read everyone and I want to know what you think really happened on Horn Island. Silent Cipher Crime. Subscribe, like, share and comment for more true crime stories.